This presentation has to do with a South African online in-service teacher development short learning program aimed at empowering teachers to teach online. I'm reporting on some preliminary analysis and plans for more detailed data collection and analysis. These are relevant to the second cycle of an action research study related to this program. The main purpose of this presentation is to share ideas of interest that have arisen so far and to ask for feedback from you about these issues as well as about the data collection and analysis that I'm still going to perform. Before the current work will make sense, I need to introduce you to the program and the issues which the first action research cycle revealed. Here are some of the details of this program. It's an 80-hour course completed over 6 months. The program was designed to be engaged in completely asynchronously. The teachers are expected to engage with material on the short learning program's website and in Google Classroom. And they were designed in a manner that was intended to be self-explanatory, to encourage self-study. The short learning program is divided into 8 modules. Each of these modules has formative assessment tasks, which are mostly in the forms of discussion forums hosted on Padlets, and a summative assessment task, which must be completed individually and submitted on Google Classroom. In the first implementation of this short learning program, which formed the first action research cycle of the study, there was a high attrition rate, particularly between when the teachers indicated their intention to participate and their submission of the first assignment. Possibly there was a poor understanding of the demands of the course and difficulty in entering the Google Classroom and using the website of the program, which may have contributed to the high initial attrition. There was also considerable attrition across the course of the program. To improve the teachers' retention rates, I introduced Zoom sessions halfway through the first implementation. I hope that the participants would use these sessions to ask for specific help. However, what I found was that very few participants attended these Zoom sessions, and those that did attend tended to be those that were not anyway at risk of attrition. Before each of the Zoom sessions, I sent out a questionnaire asking what the participants needed help with. The most common responses were either no help was needed and they just wanted to join in case they gained something, or they didn't know what to do in the module. The participants only asked 6 direct questions in the 3 questionnaires that I used in this way. As a result of this, the Zoom sessions tended largely to be monologues in which I explained instructions which had anyway been given in writing on the website and in Google Classroom. After the Zoom sessions, the recordings were uploaded to YouTube with the unlisted sharing permission. The participants were given the link and the viewing data was collected. And from that data, it's clear that the Zoom recordings were not engaged with to a great extent. I collected various forms of data during the first cycle, including open-ended questionnaire responses in which the participants referred to the strengths and weaknesses of the program and gave suggestions for improvement. More than half of the participants who answered that questionnaire voluntarily suggested that short explanatory movies should be included for each module. So, I hope that including such movies to explain the demands of the program up front, how to access the technology we used, as well as to provide instructions for each module, could help reduce attrition and enhance engagement. From a theoretical perspective, it seems reasonable that inclusion of such movies should help towards reaching these aims as follows. According to collaborative cognitive load theory, there are 2 types of knowledge: biologically primary and biologically secondary knowledge. Biologically primary knowledge does not need to be taught explicitly and in a formal setting. Instead, it's learnt inductively through social interaction. Examples include learning one's own home language and understanding facial expressions and body language. Biologically primary knowledge offers little cognitive load. In contrast, biologically secondary knowledge offers much cognitive load and requires explicit instruction, as tends to occur in formal settings. Teachers and learners use biologically primary knowledge to leverage the acquisition of biologically secondary knowledge. And the lower the knowledge and skill level of the learner, the more dependent they tend to be on the use of primary knowledge to help them to acquire the secondary knowledge. In South Africa, even teachers tend to have poor literacy and language skills in the language of learning and teaching, which is generally English. So it makes sense that they may find the online asynchronous arrangement in which they're expected to self-study through text-based instructions and information resources, and through engagement in text-based discussion activities, to offer prohibitively high cognitive load, which could result in attrition. The Zoom sessions had been intended to provide an experience which was closer to the face-to-face setup, in which facial expressions and body language and interpersonal interaction could occur, but they'd largely failed. And that's understandable, in that limited bandwidth meant that most cameras needed to be switched off during those sessions, reducing the extent to which facial expressions and body language could be used. Also, the requests to repeat the instructions meant that the interactive power that a synchronous session could potentially provide was largely traded for a monologue, which an asynchronous movie could have performed in a better way. Also, the recordings were very long, 40 minutes or longer, and that probably reduced the likelihood that the participants wanted to watch them. And one of the main reasons why those recordings of the Zoom sessions were so long was because of the inefficiency of a synchronous presentation relative to a carefully planned and scripted movie, which is edited to be highly efficient and clear. And that view is consistent with the view that importing face-to-face pedagogy into online pedagogy without alteration for the online platform is suboptimal. Considering this, between the first and second implementations of the program, I created 12 movies, each between 5 and 15 minutes long, and each dealing with a specific aspect of the program. And the movies were carefully planned, scripted, performed with a teleprompter, and edited to include supporting visuals and text keywords to improve their clarity. I'm visible on camera for much of the time to allow for use of facial expressions and body language, so that biologically primary knowledge can be used to leverage acquisition of biologically secondary knowledge. The first 4 movies explain the demands of the program, give an overview of the program, and explain how to navigate through the website and how to enter and use the program's Google Classroom. The next 8 movies explain what's required in each of the 8 modules of the program. The movies were uploaded to Vimeo. Additional features were added to the movies to hopefully enhance their ease of use and effectiveness. That includes subdividing the movies into chapters using Vimeo's timeline feature for easy navigation to subsections for rewatching, and including subtitles of various languages. These are the research questions which are currently guiding the second action research cycle in this project. I was interested in how the participants used the movies, the attrition rate in the second cycle compared to the first, and whether this had any relationship to the movies, and the role that the movies played in the participants' engagement levels in the program. I've already explained the role that primary knowledge plays in helping leverage secondary knowledge taken from cognitive load theory. Additionally, I make use of these criteria for effective learning with technology as a theoretical framework. The learning must be active, intentional, and constructive. Active learning is understood in terms of these various kinds of engagement. Intentional learning refers to purposeful rather than random engagement, and constructive learning refers to engaging in meaning-making. The second implementation of the short learning program is due to end at the end of October, when the participants will be asked to complete a questionnaire about their experiences with the program. So since I haven't yet completed even the data collection part of this study, I can't yet report fully on the findings of the study. However, I do have some preliminary data which I'd like to present, and I'd like to present the methods I'm using or planning to use for data collection and analysis, mainly with the purpose of asking for feedback on these thoughts. Let's take each research question in turn and discuss how I plan to answer each and what the preliminary data seems to be saying. How did the participants use the short information movies? I'm going to collect two types of data to answer this question. Usage data from Vimeo's analytics platform and questionnaire data from the participants. This is the usage data that I have so far for the first few movies. We can see from the high total viewing times and the considerable number of downloads that the movies were used to a large extent. We see from the high number of views relative to the number of participants who submitted the activity for that module, as well as the low view duration percentage, that participants probably reviewed selected sections. We know from literature that video usage doesn't necessarily translate to meaning making, because people can let videos play while they pay little attention to them, and that can give them a false sense of confidence. Also, the data which might suggest intentional reviewing of sections of the video might rather be showing the shallowing effect that's often observed with engagement with electronic resources. That means that the person shallowly dips into and out of parts of the resource without really engaging deeply with it in an intentional and constructive manner. Regarding the questionnaire that I'll use with the participants, the questions will come from two sources. And these are from a questionnaire taken from literature for measuring usage patterns and questions that I've added to try to gain greater insight into the issues I raised earlier, where the Vimeo analytics are ambiguous. How did retention levels across the program compare for the second implementation in which information movies were included relative to the first cycle in which these were absent? And what evidence is there that any differences may be related to inclusion of the movies in the second cycle? On one hand, this question is crucial because the biggest problem identified in the first cycle was attrition, and the inclusion of the videos in the second cycle was largely motivated by wanting to reduce attrition. But on the other hand, this question is problematic because we can't validly draw cause-effect conclusions by comparing the retention levels for the two implementations because many factors were different between these two. The profiles of the participants were very different. Also, the first implementation happened in the first year of COVID, when education was more disrupted and teachers were less prepared for coping with the disruption. And it happened later in the year, causing more difficulty for teachers to participate. Here we can see retention across the program from last year, and this is the data that I have so far regarding retention across the program. This year's program isn't yet complete, and many of the teachers who are behind in the program at this stage say that they are planning to catch up. In some cases, they say that they had COVID for a period of the program, and that's what set them back. So, considering that, I can't answer this question yet. However, at this stage, it seems that attrition across the program is still fairly high, despite inclusion of the videos. It's difficult to understand this attrition because the people who drop out tend not to answer the questionnaires. Last year, none of them answered the questionnaire. However, this time around, I've created a separate short questionnaire for those who dropped out, with the purpose of understanding the reasons for their attrition. And I'm going to target them individually to try to improve response rates. What were the participants' perceptions of the role that the movies played in their skill, emotional, participation, and performance engagement levels in the program? This will be answered by questionnaire items modified from this existing questionnaire. So, in closing, in this presentation, I've reported on research which is still in progress, so I haven't been able to provide answers to my research questions yet. But I hope that the presentation has still raised issues of interest for discussion. I'd particularly appreciate any input that you might have regarding how to go about analysing and interpreting the data, which I will be collecting.